This meeting is being recorded.
She always says that.
This
Shabbat
meeting is
Shalom,
being recorded.
Baruch Hashem. She had to say it twice that time, huh? Okay, we got a few things to cover, and so I want to share with you a little bit from the impromptu lesson that we did on Shavuot here. John and Maria have been asking me questions. They opened up a lot. We enjoyed their fellowship immensely that night. So I wanted to share some of that with you. Um, they asked some interesting questions, and so I'm going to give you the answer instead of going over all the questions. And so we'll see what we can do at this point. Now, you guys remember what it states in the writing of Revelation in the New Testament? That whenever the books are opened, another book is opened, the Lamb's Book of Life. And so they look through to see if your name is recorded in the book. And if your name is not recorded in the book, anybody remember what happens?
Cast into the lake of
No?
fire.
Say again?
Cast into the lake of fire.
Yes, cast into the lake of fire. That's what it says. And you guys remember reading that, right? Everybody familiar with that? No mistake about it, right? That's what it says? Well, I have a couple of questions. It says in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, that when we leave the body dies. We as a spirit being, we return to the one who made us. And that usually goes by virtue of Gan Eden. But it goes back to him. That's what it says. When the body dies, it says, from the dust we came, to dust we go. Everybody agree with that? Well, if that's true, what part of us goes into the fire?
Soul.
All scripture's got to agree with itself, right? And Hannah and I, we've already talked about this. If you want to jump in and help him, you can. But anybody got a clue? Mark, Patrick,
Soul.
Michael? No clue about what goes into the fire?
Soul.
It says if your name's not there, you'll be thrown into the fire. What do you think, Michael?
I already know the answer. I'm gonna let those guys work on it.
Oh, okay. We did discuss that, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to spoil the fun for them.
Oh, the fun for them? Okay. Well, scripture's got to agree with itself, and it's always got to be true, right? So you never consider what would actually go into the fire. Well, all of our collective consciousness, the combined total of what we are by virtue of being a nefesh, a living creature, all of our experience, our sentient consciousness, everything about us in this life, all the ways that we rejected the Most High, all the ways we were disobedient to Him, all the ways that we made our own choices instead of His, all the ways that just got us into trouble, all the ways that we sinned, we never got atonement and no forgiveness. That's what goes into the fire. So what happens when you go into the fire? Any idea?
Purification.
Exactly. Have you already talked to Michael?
I think
Or we just talked about this before.
sometime before.
Okay, I'm glad you remembered. Yes, it is purification. You have to try to remember that all fire is Yahweh, and all fire that we see manifest comes from Him. Whether it's the burning bush, the pillar of fire over our people in the wilderness, the lake of fire, anything in between, it's all Him. And just to give you another example of that, I'd like to see you or hear you or ask you to. That's not very professional. Leave the camera and have to pick that up. Okay. If you'll turn with me to Vayikra, Numbers, I believe, in chapter 9. Everybody in chapter 9, Vayikra, Numbers, I believe.
Leviticus.
Leviticus. Okay, I'm glad you corrected me, Michael. Well, for you guys, I don't know where I'd get off to.
The wilderness. Out there in Bamidbar. Or
Okay,
maybe you go out there and
now if we're in chapter 9, let's go down to verse 22. Everybody there? Aharon raised his hands toward the people and blessed them. Then he came down from making the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offering. What did he come down from, do you think? The altar. Moshe and Aharon entered the tent of meeting, the Ohel, then came out and blessed the people. And the glory, the kavod of Yah appeared to all the people. So the kavod has power, it has set apartness, and it can be seen. Now look at verse 24. A fire emanated from before Yahweh, blessed be He, and consumed the burnt offering and the fats on the altar. So all the people witnessed. Fire came out from the Most High and consumed the burnt offering and the fats on the altar. Didn't say it consumed the altar or the wood on the fire, the wood on the altar. All the people saw, that's what it says. And they praised and fell on their faces. So here we have another example of where the fire is coming from. So that cloud by day and that fire by night was a part of the set apartness of the Most High and His presence. Not only for our people to have a witness, but all the nations, the heathen, the pagans, all around Him had a witness. Now, still in chapter 9, let's go back up to verse 5. Talking about different offerings. Our people, they took what Moshe commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, the Ohel. The entire community approached and stood before the Most High. Moshe then said, he was talking about their obedience and response to the Most High in the teaching. And he called it a declaration. Because if you look in verse 3, okay, and if you even look in verse 1, it was on the 8th day when Moshe called for Aharon, his sons, and the elders of Israel, the princes of each tribe. And he told them what offerings to take. And in verse 3, speak to Bnei Israel, saying, take these offerings before the Most High. For today the Most High shall appear to you. So in verse 5, they took what Moshe commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, the Ohel. The entire community approached. So if we got 1.5 million people there, how many people were approaching the entrance to the tent of meeting? That's better than any concert you ever seen. Better than a football stadium for what's that playoff game? The Rose Bowl or the what kind of bowl? For the football season? Super Bowl. Okay. This is the declaration of the Most High commanded you to do, and the kavod of the Most High shall appear to you. So, us following teaching and with a loving heart and being lovingly obedient, he says the combination of the teaching given and our loving obedience is the declaration that the Most High commands us. One of the few places you see the combination of the teaching and our loving obedience to it, that is called a declaration of the Most High. The combination of the two together. Does that settle your spirit a little bit, Patrick?
Yeah.
Now, and that together is a declaration of the Most High. And he states at that moment, the kavod of the Most High will appear to you. So that can be visual, audio, or any of the other senses. Now, when it says shall appear to you, try to remember that he made us nefesh, a living creature, a living soul, a combination of a spirit being, being of light, and flesh and blood, physiology, biochemistry, that together the whole body with a spirit being combined together with the breath of life makes us nefesh, living soul, makes us living creature. So when he says to you, appear to you, he's not just talking about the body, the flesh and blood, eyes. He's talking about every part of us, because every time he talks about us, he's talking about the whole living creature. That includes the spirit being, the being of light within us that we are. And it includes the house that we as a spirit being are in. And it includes the breath of life that animates us as a living creature, a living soul. So when he's talking about, every time he says you, where he talks about us, he's talking about this whole living creature, this whole nefesh, the living soul. Nothing is just the body. We as a spirit being, we're always being talked to. We're always being taught Torah. We're always being taught about relationship with the Most High. We're always being talked about in terms of covenant with Him. It's always about the whole nefesh, the whole living creature. Does that give you a better outlook on things? How you doing now, Patrick?
Doing good.
Just helping out a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Now we go forward just a tiny little bit. We had to cover a couple of few things because and because and because. Now, now we have to go to First Kings. First Kings chapter 8.
Chapter what?
8. EIGHT. 8. The number 8. The one
Thank you.
after 7, the one before 9.
And after 7.
That's just dry Jewish humor, Patrick. Now in chapter 8 it starts. Then Shlomo gathered together the elders of Israel, the princes, and all the heads of the tribes, the princes, the leaders of the ancestral families, the princes of the sons of Israel. And a lot was happening here. So, and Shlomo made declarations all throughout here. And in verse 27, I bring your attention to it. He asked, would Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh truly dwell on earth? Look, the heavens and the highest heavens cannot contain you. And surely this temple that I have built, surely not this temple I have built, but may you turn to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication. Oh, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, my Elohim, to hear the cry and the prayer that your servant prays before you today. Now, how much humility is he showing before the Most High? Now, how many of us today approach the Most High with that kind of humility? Admit to the Most High that we're one of his servants. Now, remember, the Mishkan was a place for the Most High's name to dwell. And they are curious about how even the Mishkan or the temple could be enough for his name. And in verse 29, that your eyes be open toward this temple night and day, to the place of which you said, my name shall be there, to hear the prayer that your servant shall pray toward this place. And may you hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel, when they shall pray toward this place. May you hear from your abode in heaven. So, why do we turn to Jerusalem from wherever we are in the world? You just got your answer. It's still a tradition culturally among our people that when we would pray or whenever we would receive something from the Most High or from the Cohen, from a rabbi, we receive while we face Israel. It is still very common as a tradition among our people. And you read it here now why it became a tradition of our people. Now, we just read, but may you turn to the prayer of your servant that your servant prays before you today. That your eyes be open toward this temple night and day, to the place of which you said, my name shall be there. Now, it is also said that in the second temple, his name was not there. So if his name was not there, then all of this could not happen, could it? There had to be a reason for us to turn toward the temple and turn toward Jerusalem. And in verse 30, and may you hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel. Here it's saying again that our people are called Israel, the overcomers, those who prevail. The land was never called Israel until 1948. Israel was always our people, still is. When they shall pray toward this place, may you hear them from your abode in heaven. May you hear and forgive. May you hear and forgive. So, if you've been giving your offerings and you've been atoned for, what does this teach? This teaches whenever you have a good heart, you have atonement. What happens when you pray to him and seek him out with supplication and prayer? What's one of the things that happens?
He's going to hear you.
He not only hears, what else does he do?
Forgive.
Say
Forgive.
it again.
Yeah. Forgive.
Yes. But it doesn't say anybody made a point of saying, please forgive me. In verse 31, if a man should sin against his fellow, who imposes an oath on him to make him swear, and the oath comes before your altar to this temple, may you hear from heaven, may you act and judge your servants, condemning the wicked party to make him suffer the consequences of his ways, and vindicating the righteous party to pay him accordance with his righteousness. What has he just said to do? What has Shlomo just prayed to have happen? Anybody have a clue? Anyone have a
Anytime you prayed facing Israel, that he would hear you, and forgive, and continually accept.
You just negated half of that stuff, Patrick. How would you do that? In verse 32, may you hear from heaven, may you act and judge your servants, condemning the wicked party to make them suffer the consequences of his ways, and vindicating the righteous party to pay him in accordance with his righteousness. He just gave you the blueprint. Again, one way of a blueprint for how he judges when we pray.
No.
You've heard me say at times when somebody is standing contrary to you, then ask the Most High to judge between you and that person. The root word for judging is to do what? Restore to life.
Speak on behalf of.
When we ask him to judge between us, well, there, Patrick Howler, sir, I asked the Most High to judge between me and you here. So when I ask the Most High to do that, he does. He judges between both of us. But that means he's got to judge both of us, and he's got to restore us both to life. Because when he judges one and he judges the other, as he corrects whatever it is that was between us, he also restores us to life. Don't you think that's pretty neat? Maybe? Okay, still in chapter 8 of First Kings here. Turn your attention to verse 38 through verse 43. And will somebody please read that for me?
Say it again, where you're at.
First Kings chapter 8, verse 38 through 43. Please read the passage.
Okay. No.
Nobody's reading aloud?
I can read if that's okay with everyone else.
That's got it. That's great.
What prayer and supplication soever be made by any man of all your people, Israel, who shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hands toward this house, then hear you in heaven your dwelling place, and forgive, and do, and render unto every man according to all his ways, whose heart you know. For you, even you only, know the hearts of all the children of men, that they may fear you all the days that they live in the land which you gave unto our fathers.
Three more verses, sir.
Moreover, concerning the stranger that is not of your people Israel, when he shall come out of a far country for your name's sake, for they shall hear of your great name, and of your mighty hand, and of your outstretched arm, when he shall come and pray toward this house. Hear you in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calls to you for, that all the peoples of the earth may know your name, to fear you as does your people Israel, and that they may know that your name is called upon this house which I have built.
Thank you. Now, does that help you understand how the Most High will hear the prayers of even people not in covenant? Maybe. No? Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. So, if a Muslim or a Buddhist prays the way it's instructed here, he's going to hear him. Even though it says that so the world may know your name. The world knows his name, Yod He Wah. They may not show it any respect. They may not try to keep it set apart, but they know his name. They may not even say it. They may come up with a reason not to try to say it. But they know his name. And they know, everybody knows, that Shlomo built the first temple for his dad, King David. The world knows. Now, do you begin to see and understand through what we've just covered how a person's cognizance, their thinking, their sense of being a sentient being alive, that is provoked by his breath, and all we experience through our choices, good and bad, why that would be what would go into the fire for being purified? Because the way people would reject the Most High and his name and his covenant and his teachings. And they will stay in the fire until they are, as Mark reminded us, until they go through purification. It's like a metal in fire. You remember that? What happens when a metal is put in fire? Anybody remember?
Burns up the
What
impurity.
happens to the metal when it's put into fire? The fire causes all the impurities to be separated from that metal. So what happens in the Most High's fire, that lake of fire, and that purification? We get separated from all of those bad choices. We finally give it up, all of our rejection of him, all of our hard-headedness, stubbornness, stiff neck, anything else you want to call it. Now, does this help your understanding a little bit? Does this help you understand why that moment, standing before the throne, the books are open, another book is open? Why is it so important to have your name written in that book right that moment? Which brings me all the way back to the two questions I began to ask for years. What does Scripture teach us? How do I get my name written in that book of life? And the second question, how do I keep my name in that book of life? Now, this is a lot of what we covered on Shavuot, just to bring you up to date a little bit. Now, we got to talk about his set apartness and take that a little bit farther. Are you feeling okay today, Hananiah?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay.
A little tired.
With all those burdens that you put on yourself, it's no wonder you'd be a little tired.
I agree.
Sometimes we just choose to go through some things. I know. Set apartness. Who does set apartness belong to? Yes, sir. Anybody?
The Most High.
Absolutely. Does it belong to anybody else?
No.
Okay. Well, then let's learn a bit about his set of partners. Where does his set of partners come from?
Him.
Think about it. Think about it a second.
Kasha. Kasha.
We know about the person of the Most High that he is spirit, that he has no corporal being, no flesh and blood. He is all breath, spirit. We know that he has his name, and by the power and authority of that name, all things are done. We know that he has the right hand of power that can be in different offices. We know that he has his kavod, and it has many facets to it. There are some who would suggest that his set apartness is seated in his name and his honor. There are some who teach that they're inseparable, and that makes it the seat together of his set apartness. Now, we've studied about the young boy Shemuel and how the Most High chose to reveal himself. We know the Most High to be omnipotent, omnipresent, and that it's only when he reveals that presence that's already there that, along with what he reveals in his presence, how do we know it's him being revealed? The set apartness. How do we know the fruits of the Spirit that come to us are from him, his spirit. His set apartness. We know the spirit itself is always set apart, always true, always redeeming. So everything that comes from it, the fruits of the spirit, they are always set apart, always true, always redeeming. Now, let's take a little bit more of a look at this. We know from what we've studied about the mystery, the hell, the tabernacle, that there's different levels, for lack of a better word, different grades, different parts to set apartness. We know that the sons of Aharon, from Aharon himself, was set apart to the Most High. And as it continues, we would learn in Torah that all the sons of Aharon had the Most High as their inheritance. They weren't entitled to land or anything else. And that their labor, their ministry to the Most High was the way that we serve Israel. And all the different functions he gave us as Kohanim. The receiving of all offerings and giving atonement and his blessings with them. Being the primary Torah teachers, being the primary judges. Not discounting the judges that the priests of the firstborn are in every family. And it is the priests of the firstborn, those judges are the ones that sit at the city's gates, judging in matters. Now, still, there's set apartness there. Patriarch of each family is set apart to that office. The priest of the firstborn is set apart to that office. When people are joined into marriage, they are set apart to each other. They are set apart in marriage because marriage is his institution. Everyone that chooses to serve in some capacity before the Most High, they have to be set apart to that office. If you are a king of Israel, you have to be set apart to that office. If you're a prophet of Israel, or a prophet within the people of Israel, you have to be set apart to that office. If you vow a vow, you are set apart within that vow. Because whatever you vow, whatever you give your word to, whatever obligation you make, whatever you make a promise about, you are set apart to keep that promise, because he says, whatever you say you will do, he requires of you to do that thing. He says of himself that when he says a word, it cannot return to him empty and void. What does that tell us about our own word? He expects it to never return to us empty and void. It carries his set apartness because we belong to him. How do people know that we belong to him? What is that oath, that sign that he puts on us? When he puts his name on us, what does that indicate when he puts his name on us? Because of the name's set apartness, what do we have? His set apartness. When we are able to receive the fruits of the Spirit, and then we see fruit of the Spirit in another person, or the set apartness of the fruits of the Spirit we receive, make us to be able to see the fruit of the Spirit and its set apartness in another person. That's the only witness anywhere in Scripture that we're given when it talks about any witness of the Spirit. That set apartness is what lets us know it's not a counterfeit. It's him. How do I know it's him? How do I know it's his voice? The set apartness of his voice, the set apartness of his presence. That's how we know it's him. The adversary or any other anti-Messiah is unable to duplicate and counterfeit that set apartness. Let me tell you how the counterfeiting happens. Because it teaches us that whenever the anti-Messiah, the adversary, the beast, the false prophet, whenever they come, and they are empowered to do counterfeit works, not once in any of the prophecies does it ever say that he gives them his set apartness for people to be fooled. What they're fooled about is the counterfeit works because people don't know enough. They don't choose to know enough to look for his set apartness that anything is done. It's not in raising the dead. It's not in healing the sick. It's not in making somebody whole that you need to have any wonderment. It's in his set apartness that we have awe, that we have reverence, that we fear him. It's his set apartness that lets us know. When Moshe approached the burning bush, what was he told to do? Look at this burning bush and have respect for this burning bush that doesn't burn? No, it didn't. The voice out of the bush didn't say that. It said, take off your shoes, your sandals. Why? Because the ground you're standing on is set apart because of my presence. As a matter of fact, the voice never said much about the bush not burning and that fire that was there. The voice didn't say anything about that. It simply talked to him. The set apartness was felt. And even the ground was set apart because of the presence of the fire in the bush. And so he said, because the ground is set apart, take your shoes off. He didn't say anything about the set apartness of the fire, the set apartness of the bush. And if you notice, Moshe didn't approach the bush. He just looked at it with wonder and awe. And he spoke to the voice that spoke from within the fire. That same voice that the first man and woman saw walking in the cool of the morning in Gan Eden. So when you're around that set apartness, you can feel it. You can sense it. You have to make adjustments within yourself. Oh my. Oh, what do I do? What do I say? So depending on how much of that set apartness is revealed, and you can feel it, it's going to depend on how you act in response to it. How do we know somebody is a teacher? How do we know somebody is a healer? How do we know somebody is a counselor? How do we know somebody has the fruits of the Spirit? That's set apartness, because they are set apart to that office. They're set apart to that job. They're set apart for that love to work through them to love somebody. That mercy is set apart from the Most High, and it works through us. And we feel that set apartness. We feel the fruit of that Spirit. And that mercy goes forth to whomever he chooses it to go forth to. The compassion, the kindness, the gentleness, the love, the joy. All the fruits of the Spirit. They all work through us, not belonging to us individually. We don't possess them. And working through us, we get the first part of it. And then we praise him. We get the first part of it. And that first part of it is what we give back to him. First fruits of that fruit. He gives us love as fruit of the Spirit. The first thing we do is we love him for giving us that love. We're unable to love him because we received that love from him. So the love that he loves with, we give back to him as a first fruit. The same thing with the joy from him. The same thing from peace with him. The same thing from mercy from him. Compassion, all of it. Gratitude, gentleness. The set apartness is how we know it's him. The set apartness is how we know a gift from him, such as the fruits of the Spirit are from him. So, if there's a teacher, how do we know that teacher is coming from him and that teaching gift is on that person to make them a teacher is of the Most High? It's that set apartness, knowing, feeling the truth is there. Another part of the Spirit. And when we hear and we feel that set apartness and we hear and feel that truth, what else are we going to feel from that? The redeeming that is present with the Spirit. Because where you have one part of the Spirit, the set apartness, you have the truth, you have the redeeming value of it as well. They're never separate from each other. They're all working, always as they're revealed, all at the same time. When we talk about his presence, when we talk about his dwelling place, when we speak of how we feel with what he gives us, this is the resounding point of how we can know it's him. It is a set apartness that we know the love that we feel is of him or of a person. Because even if a person is set apart to him, if a person loves us with his own love, we won't feel the set apartness of the love from the Most High. When he sets a couple apart to himself in marriage, they are not only set apart to each other, they're set apart to the Most High. And that set apartness is felt. We know what's really there. How is it conveyed? Instantaneously. How do we feel the presence of the Most High whenever he is still at his home in the sides of the north in heaven? He's omnipresent. All creation is him. All creation belongs to him. What do we feel happening? Why is it that we feel? Because of all the fruits of the Spirit that went into making us. When you look at your husbands and wives, the way that you love him is because he gave you a love to love them with. That's a set apart love, and it's conveyed from him through you to your mate. That doesn't mean that we won't, in our own maintenance, in our own person, love with the love that we have a capacity to love with, but it's greatly enhanced and greatly overshadowed by the love from him, loving through us or loving through them that love us. Very few people have studied his set apartness to the degree it needs to be studied for there to be such a familiarity with it. We know of its need to be with us and with others. We know of its need in our lives. We know of its need in our interactions. We know of the need for a set apartness in every part of our lives and every fabric of our lives. And it's through his set apartness that he lets us know that's not a good decision. That's not a good thing for you to be doing. I'm talking to you. We commonly refer to as the conscience, but even our human consciousness and our conscience itself does not have a set apartness. So we need a set apartness with it to complement what we have naturally. Just give you a little bit better idea of things. Now, we all have purpose because he designed us and made us for his purposes to be fulfilled. And when we ask him directly, which of your purposes am I fulfilling? What part of the purposes of your kingdom are you using me to fulfill? And then we will begin to discover his purposes in our life. What he had us born for, what he made us for. Any questions thus far? No questions? Great. My job is done then, huh? Remember what everybody might call the basics. You know that his spirit, his ruach, his breath is always set apart. It's always true. It's always redeeming. Therefore, we know that anything working through the presence and activity of his spirit, his breath, is always going to be as well set apart, true, and redeeming. So, when he puts his name on us, identifying us as belonging to him, being a part of him, what about his name? His kavod, or kavod, if you want to get Ashkenazic about it. Now, at this point, we might want to start asking ourselves, how much of his kavod has he extended to us in our lives? How much of his name has he put on us? Scripture, prayer, meditation on his word, turning heavenward with our face to seek him, all the different ways and means that we're taught. We need that set apartness in order to just take our place before him. Now, if you know that we are always before him, his set apartness is always there. If you're studying Torah, which is a good thing to do, does Torah set you apart? Does Torah study by itself set you apart? Or what happens to your Torah study when he sets you apart and then you study Torah? It gets interesting, doesn't it? Now, consider Yeshua has said, I came to say the things I was told to say. I came to do the things I was told to do. So, was the set apartness with Yeshua, or was the set apartness with the words he would say, each word being a container? Would the set apartness be with the things that he did, each act and each deed being a container? Anybody picking up on this a little bit? When we belong to him and his name has been put on us and his set apartness has been extended to us, and his set apartness, people can see a little of his kavod. And his set apartness, people can feel his wisdom. And his set apartness, we are identified. Any questions? Hey, you guys are making this easy for me. So you guys have already grown to this degree and you don't need the rest of the lesson? Hello? Somebody said something?
I wouldn't
Was that
go
you?
that far, Rabbi.
Oh, okay. Oh, your son is still with us, huh? Good, wonderful.
Yes, sir. He drew a picture of me.
Fantastic.
I'm
Text
sending
it to me so I can keep that on file.
to you.
Now, he said, don't keep the little children from coming to me. Why would he say that?
Because we're all his.
Oh my, say it again. When we're his, what happens in our lives and our contact with other people with that set of partners being evident? Thank you, Mark. Toda.
Other people are drawn to him by his presence
How?
in us.
Set of partners of the fruit of the Spirit. Uh-huh. Now, why does it say not to join with somebody who is not one of our people? Why does it say that, do you think? If somebody's not one of his people, do they have his set of partners?
No,
No.
No. Can you feel his kavod from them?
no.
What's this?
And yet, we should have his set of partners with it all the time. We should have what? His fruits of the Spirit with us all the time? And what? Anyone else have any idea? Would we submit ourselves to him with humility? That he will speak through us? Does that happen when the people don't belong to him and he can't set them apart that way?
Yes, he does.
Now, we have many examples in Scripture that talk about set apartness, holiness from the outside of the ohel tentavidi to the inside. Well, what happens to his set apartness when other people begin to encroach upon it? Other people begin to come up to you, touch you, be close to you. What happens to your set apartness then? And until you get home to him, you don't know, do you? Scripture doesn't really reveal it. For that messenger with that flaming sword that guards the entrance to Gan Eden, what would you have to get past him?
Since he has a flaming sword, I think the fire.
Say it again.
Since he has a flaming sword, I think you need to have already passed through the fire or have already been set apart.
Are you going to add anything more to that?
Not right now.
Okay, Michael is correct. Now, consider his words are set apart, his actions are set apart, his right hand is set apart. Every part of him that has been revealed to us is always set apart. What would you say about sons of Aharon Kohanim that are not working in their office? Are they set apart? Anybody? If a heathen or a pagan starts seeking him in his name, are they set apart? Can you support your head nod a little bit, Michael? We know that they can pray and he hears their prayers. You've heard me say many times, he hears all of our prayers. So how does he answer the prayers? Is there a requirement for the way that he answers prayer? Nobody?
No.
Oh. I gave you a couple of hints with what we looked at in First Kings. First and Second Kings has a lot of passages like that. First and Second Kings has a lot about his set apartness. The way he answers prayers and supplications and petitions. All three, no, those prayers, parts of prayer are supplication, parts of prayer are petitions. Those are two different kinds of prayer. Intercession, another kind of prayer. We have a few different ways of praying. Inspirational prayer, public prayer. Would you call inspirational prayer petition or supplication? Would you call public prayer petition or supplication or another kind? Think we still have fun a little bit? Now, if you're continually asking for all of his fruits of the Spirit, producing and reproducing in your heart and life, but it all remains unto the Father, and you're continually getting more fruit of the Spirit every day for that, He answers your prayer. How much of a set apartness are you getting?
All of it.
What's the set apartness for? What's the difference between the set apartness that comes with fruit of the Spirit, set apartness that comes with knowing His name and using it, set apartness with the oath, the sign that He puts on us, set apartness with how He puts His name on us? What's the difference in all that different set apartness? Hannah, when was the War of 1812 fought?
1950.
I knew you were going to be flippant.
1812.
I
1812.
didn't say arrogant. I just said flippant. So,
Well, we talked about like the different levels. It's like stages of him, you know. Like we're growing, we're maturing, we're moving, and it's a constant as we choose obedience, joyful obedience to him. It moves us to different places.
so perhaps instead of levels like I first mentioned, we might have direction that serves His purposes. Now, we know that Moshe had some set apartness because after he would finish talking to the Most High, all the people of Israel, what would they do? No, cover your face. It's too much for us. You talk to Him and we'll listen to you. They couldn't deal with the set apartness. The light was shining too much. So we ask for all the fruits of the Spirit. Oh my. And when we get in the kingdom, we ask for all the fruits of the light as well. Okay. Michael,
Yes,
you think perhaps we could continue this after a break?
sounds good.
Okay, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Hashem.
See you after break.
Bye, shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I'll put up with the lady.
This meeting is being recorded.
She always says that. I'm glad I'm not stuck with her for a weekend someplace. She would give me time for a lot of meditation and prayer. Now, quite briefly, I'd like everybody to turn to the writing of Hebrews in chapter 4. Let me know when you're there. Everybody there? Hebrews chapter 4? Okay, before we get into it, I've got to reiterate some things. From Bereshit, from Genesis, we are taught that on the seventh day, the Most High, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, was finished with His work, and so He rested. He entered into His own rest. And so we describe that process, we describe that activity of Him in His own rest by calling it Shabbat. We have several words for sleeping or for napping or for resting, but this word, Shabbat, is reserved for Him and His rest. So when we talk about the Shabbats, and we talk about resting, we're not talking about our own rest, our own casualness, our own napping, We're talking about his rest. He entered into his rest. Okay? Now, I'm not going to take you to the places that I want to take you to today. I got to take you here first. And if we can't finish, we'll continue it next week if you like. Okay? But it's important that you know that every Shabbat, every convocation, there is a regard for the Most High entering his rest. Now, if you look at Leviticus 23, you'll see where it says, these are my appointed times. That's the Most High talking. These are my appointed times. So every Shabbat, every convocation, every required assembly, he enters into his rest. This is something that you need to have a foundational understanding of. This will never change. This does not vary. Okay? The importance of the way we present ourselves in his appointed times, the men of Israel, the sons of Israel, represent the righteous men of Israel and our entire house behind us, with us. Whether that's just a husband and wife or anybody else, even if they've already passed and gone, the generations previous to where they sleep with the fathers. When we present ourselves before the Most High, we and all of our house and generations before us are there before him. Every Shabbat, every day of rest, every convocation, every required assembly, he requires the sons of Israel to present themselves before him. They, in turn, they cover all of their house, immediate family and beyond, before the Most High. Everybody with me? Answer? Whoa. I don't know how I did that. My phone called somebody and I just not realized it. I had to stop it. Now, everybody have a base understanding of what I just discussed with you? Everybody with me? Any questions on that thus far? Okay. In Hebrews chapter 4, and I'm reading from Roth's Aramaic English New Testament. Let us fear, therefore, or else while there is a firm promise of entering into his rest, any among you should be found coming short of entering. For to us also is the announcement, as well as to them. But the word they heard did not benefit them because it was not combined with the faith of those who heard it. One of the witnesses of somebody's faith and somebody speaking from their faith is, again, set apartness. It's only there with fruits of the Spirit. Okay? But we who have believed do enter into rest. But as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, they will not enter into my rest. For behold, the works of Elohim existed from the foundation of the world. As he said of the Shabbat, Elohim rested on the seventh day from all of his works. Okay? I hope everybody's with me at this point. And in verse 5, and here again he said, they will not enter into my rest. Therefore, because there was a place where one and another might enter, and those persons for the first to whom the good news was delivered did not enter because they had no faith. And again, he established another day, a long time afterwards, as above written. Then David said, David, today, if you will hear his voice, and do not harden your hearts, for if Yehoshua, the son of Nun, had given them rest, he would not have spoken afterwards of another day. For there remains a Shabbat for the people of Elohim. For he who had entered into his rest had also rested from his works as Elohim did from his. Let us therefore strive to enter into that rest, or else we fall short after the way of those who did not believe. Now, this is a passage that is a rephrasing of what we find in the prophets and the writings, okay, about the Shabbats and entering into his rest. When a Shabbat comes, the reason that we don't do what we do on the other 6 days, the reason we don't buy or sell, barter or trade, the reason we direct our attention, our time, and our energies and our thoughts to the things of the Most High is so that we can disregard the things of the world, disregard everything else, so that he can judge us for the day before preparation day and see if he finds us acceptable, so that we might, every Shabbat, every appointed time, enter into his rest with him on that appointed time. That is our goal. That should be our desire. Every appointed time, we should have a desire welling up inside of us like a wellspring to be able to be accepted by him, to enter into his rest with him, because it's only by his permission that we are able to enter into his rest on every and any appointed time. Is everybody with me? To be able to fully do that, he recognizes us by seeing himself, his set apartness, us belonging to him, us lovingly obedient to him, us having that presence and activity of his set apart, true, redeeming spirit with all of its fruit of the spirit that is setting us apart and keeping us true and redeeming us. He needs to see evidence of that work in our life through his spirit. Just like we seek him through his spirit and the fruits of his spirit, he sees us through his own spirit's presence and activity in our life. That is the witness he's looking for us to enter into his rest. Everybody with me? Any questions before we go on? No questions. Okay. Now, you've heard me speak a lot on his spirit, his Ruach HaKodesh, always being set apart, always true, and always redeeming. If I'm a bit repetitious about this, I would normally say forgive me, but on this time, please stay with me on it. Okay? All of his fruits of the Spirit are equally set apart, true, and redeeming. All the fruits of the Spirit that grow inside of us and in turn grow us. As they grow and in turn grow us, they are continually setting us apart more, being true with us and redeeming us. The combination of being able to always be true and continually being set apart more, continually redeemed, is the whole point of getting us out of the house of Yaakov, getting us out of the house of Israel into the kingdom. Because he's got to continually set us apart. And with us humbly submitting to this process, he's got to continually keep us in his truth. So he recognizes his truth with us, his set apartness with us. And with us submitting to the redeeming process that is done. This is the way that he brings us to him. Because we have got to be set apart enough. We got to have enough truth, and we got to be redeemed enough to be close to him, to be with him, to be at God. This process rearranges our thinking, our speech, our behavior, everything. As it begins in that training ground of the house of Yaakov, and it moves us to the house of Israel, Israel being overcomers, prevailing. So there we're prevailing in his justification. The word for justification is righteousness. So as he judges us and he justifies us, he clothes us with that justification. He clothes us in his righteousness. And when we are there enough, as you've read in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 10, that process is going on. 11, 12, and 13, when Yeshua opens the door to the kingdom, invites us in, then that next segment starts. Not only do we get fruit of the Spirit doing all of that, but then we get fruit of the light. Fruit of the Spirit is for us to be able to provide that witness and set us apart even in our prayers and our praise. Set us apart so that he fights those battles because he orders our footsteps. So we can pay attention to him instead of what the world is doing. And so more and more, as he finds us more acceptable, more set apart, more truth, and we are redeemed more, as he sees that, and he sees more of this with us, then that's when Yeshua invites us into the kingdom, and we're acceptable, and Yeshua reveals the Father, and not only does the Father know us, but then we begin to know him, and we get fruit of the light added as that process continues. What do you think is going to be happening then? Can you imagine being set apart enough for Yeshua to reveal the Father to us? Enough truth for the Father could recognize his own. Enough, being redeemed enough to where we are seen as being fully redeemed. And you think that's a good place to be with him? And then we become increasingly more and more of a lifestyle witness for others to see, so that others have enough light coming from us to see more of the direction that they need to be going in. We don't have a status as we grow. I've been at this so long, I really know what's going on. That's not what goes on. Because the more we grow, the more they see him in us. The more they grow, the more they get a witness of the Spirit. The more we grow, it's him that they see, not us. From the beginning, it's all about the Most High. When we're with him and he's with us, then we will know what else he's revealed that we can't grasp now. Now, us and now being either those in the house of Yaakov and those in the house of Israel. Okay? Now, we've got a secondary measure of looking at the set apartness, and it's given as a conundrum. First, in the New Testament, it says, Yeshua stands at the door and knocks until finally we let him in. Yeshua can only stand at the door and knock if the Most High has revealed himself to us and revealed Yeshua and given us to Yeshua. So when he gives us to Yeshua and he is knocking to come inside, because that's been done already, once he's inside and the presence and activity of the Spirit commanded by him is doing all of its work to clean us up, all of its work to bear fruit, and that process is going on, when it gets to a point finally in the house of Israel, because it also tells us in a secondary way to stand at the door and knock and keep knocking until the door is open. That second door that Yeshua opens to go inside is him in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 11, him opening the door of the kingdom and inviting us in. He's inside of us already, and while he's inside of us, he's inviting us as a spirit being in, not the physical person. The first time that he comes inside of us, he takes up an abode. He domiciles with us. Some people like to say he tabernacles, but he's got to get us there before the tabernacling can be done, because for the tabernacling to be done, it has to be a place for his name to be. Okay? So he comes inside the physical house, and he sets apart the spirit being that we are, and then he grows us with fruit of the Spirit until he gets to the point to where he opens the door to the kingdom, invites us in, because we're knocking. And the way that we knock is the way that we grow in fruits of the Spirit, because of the way the fruit of the Spirit is growing inside of us. And the whole time it's happening, think about this. As the fruit of the Spirit grows inside of us, it's setting us apart more. It's redeeming us more and keeping us in His truth more. And as this fruit of the Spirit grows, it's in turn growing us. So as that fruit of the Spirit that's set apart is setting us apart. As it's redeeming, it redeems us. So this process of the work of the fruits of the Spirit, that's the work it's doing with us. It's preparing us for whenever that door is open and we accept that invitation and we enter into the kingdom. That's the purpose of setting us apart until we're fully accepted. That's the part of redeeming us with the set apartness, because without the set apartness, we can't be redeemed. Without being redeemed, we can't get more set apart. And it's all within His truth. Is this making any more sense? We're going to find a set apartness all around us. Because why? He orders our footsteps. He goes out before us. He prepares our way. He fights all of our battles for us, inside of us and outside of us. He gets the victory for each battle inside of us and outside of us. For each victory he gets of each battle, he gives us that victory. And then, once he gives us the victory that he got for us, he gets honor from our lives because of the changes that have taken place in our lives. So that we, in turn, walk with him. Halakha. Is this making any more sense?
Hey, Rabbi, tell me again how it was that we knock. I didn't quite catch all of it.
Okay, ask me again.
repeat how we knock? You said two things, but I didn't understand it. I didn't really catch all of it.
Repeat your question. I did not understand it.
You were talking about he knocks on the door of our heart.
Yes.
In return, we are also commanded to knock.
Within the New Testament, it says he will knock on the door, waiting for us to open it for him to come inside.
And
And
we are also commanded to knock.
Yes, but we can't knock until he's inside of us.
Okay, and then you told us how it is that we knock. Would you repeat
knock.
that?
Oh, okay, sure. I didn't understand it first. Thank you for bearing with me. We knock by being grown in the fruit of the Spirit. We knock by the fruit of the Spirit inside of us growing and growing us. The way that our lifestyle changes, the way that our walk with him changes, the way that we grow more acceptable in righteousness in the house of Israel. That's the way that we knock.
Okay.
Does that make any more sense? Let me try another example. When you first joined the Marine Corps and you went to boot, were you a Marine?
No.
No. But what was your goal?
To be in the Corps.
Your goal was to become a Marine.
Right.
Okay? Primary, bar none. The whole point of being in boot was to develop enough and learn enough and go through that morphos to become a Marine. To get that eagle, globe, and anchor. Period. Bar none.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can anybody ever take that away from you?
Nope.
Now, keep that premise in mind. All through Rav Shaul's letters in the New Testament, one of his main themes is telling you, enter into the race and run and don't stop. Finish the race. You're not racing against anybody else, against yourself only. Race and finish the race. Finishing the race is finishing this process I just finished outlining.
Okay.
Okay? This process of having the presence and activity of the Spirit within us is the way that Yeshua commands the Spirit to develop us. That's the way he takes us away from the world. That's the way the world loses its grasp on us. That's the way that we let go of the world, is by the fruits of the Spirit growing within us and in turn growing us.
Okay.
Okay? More and more, the fruits of the Spirit being given as seeds, being given birth to, producing and reproducing in our life. And the fruit that actually remains and honors the Father. The fruit that doesn't remain is because we're quenching the Spirit at that point in time.
Oh.
Okay? So as we become more and more loving, obedient servants to the Most High, the more the fruit grows within us, it in turn is able to grow us. The more he grows us, the more he can justify us.
Gotcha.
Okay? When he finds us fully acceptable, as it says in 2 Peter chapter 1 or chapter 2, okay, it says there in verse 11 And when he finds us acceptable, he opens the door to the kingdom and invites us in. So the only way we can be knocking on that door to the kingdom is by the way we grow for him to find us acceptable.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, that was easy. So, before we go on anymore, somebody give me some feedback on where we're at.
Go ahead, guys. I've been talking a little. I'll let you guys take a turn.
Yeah, I understand the reference of us being like a tree, you know, with the fruit of the spirit. It's growing us. The tree continues to produce leaves that could, you know, the fruit tree, the flowers, then the seed, then the fruit, and then it does it again. It falls off, starts over, and just keeps doing it. But as the tree is growing, the fruit, the tree is growing, but the fruit is growing at the same time, you know? So it's a two-way process happening at all times. So now I see why we're referenced to trees. And we have to be planted solidly in order to produce. Makes sense. Percussion. The mayim, even the water. Wow.
Yeah.
Percussion.
I would say that our set apartness and our whole halakha and belief system, so to speak, is all interconnected with the fruits of the spirit, but also through his appointed times. And that's how he knows, that's how he knows us, is by what we're doing. And we're only going to do it if we have the desire.
You are right to an extent.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
According to our desires are there in so much as the fruits of the spirit have grown us.
Right.
But he also recognizes the amount of set apartness that we've grown into. The amount of set apartness that we have, the amount that we've been redeemed, is the extent of how much we can enter into his rest on any appointed time.
Okay. So I guess rather than that, I should have used maybe heart rather than that, because the you know, you unless I have the heart to do any of it, you know, even if I do it and I don't have the heart, it's not bearing any fruit, because it's not coming from my heart. It's not because of a desire, having the desirous heart.
What do you think of that, Hannah?
Yep, that's back to that verse where it says, seek me with your whole heart. It's the heart
Okay.
that, takes us. And that
Guys,
seeking
I
is
was
king.
picking on Hannah. I was picking at her because I developed a habit with her over the years. Every time she's doing it with her head instead of her heart, I'll start patting myself on the chest. And finally she'll say, oh, okay. And so with different people, I'll pick reminders like that to help them catch themselves so that they can continue to grow without themselves being their own impediment. So, what do you think, Mark?
I've gotten people upset with me by mentioning that.
Being your own impediment?
No, I've had people get upset with me because I've mentioned the heart issue, that the whole thing is a heart issue, and that if you're doing, if even if you're just keeping the regular 7th-day Shabbat, if you're keeping it just to keep because you think that you're going to go to hell, you're not really doing anything, because your heart isn't there.
It's impossible to go to hell.
Well, right, I
The
get that,
most,
but
yeah. But you might want to point out to him, he said he was going to put hell in the lake of fire too, along with death. So how's anybody going to go to hell if hell itself is going into the lake of fire?
No.
Not ready to talk yet, Mark?
Great lesson. I appreciate every one of them.
Okay.
Glad to be back.
Hope I didn't bore you with my story about the hill and the point man.
I was kind of wondering what happened. Did you call an airstrike or something?
Oh no. We unace the AO. We got out of there as quickly as possible, every man. We had the coordinates. We waited till we were well away before we got on the radio to break radio silence.
No doubt.
Yep.
Yeah, they can keep that dragon.
The dragon was listening.
So, well, Michael,
Yes, sir.
tell me what you think about the time. You guys' time there.
What I think about our time here?
Yes, it's at the time of the day for the Shabbat where you're at.
It's
You're almost an hour ahead of where we're at.
yeah, we're at 5 o'clock. The sun will set here in about 3 hours.
It's 5 o'clock here too. I thought you guys were ahead of us about almost an hour.
I am.
Well, not by the numbers on the clock, but you have more sunlight than we do. We're so far north, you have almost an hour more sunlight.
Well, so there. Okay.
So, yeah, but it doesn't go by the numbers on the clock. It's a latitude.
Okay, I didn't know if anybody else had any obligations because you're at a later time than me. It was a question of discovery for consideration. Now, learning more about the Most High entering into his rest and how he feels about others entering into his rest is a whole nother lesson. Okay? And that's also interrelated in how he reveals himself and how he calls people. And that's based on how he looks on the heart. So, any questions at this point? Any other questions? Okay, I've got a question. How many ways can you be set apart?
I think
How
you
many times
mentioned,
can you be set apart?
I think you mentioned like 6 ways, 6 different ways. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Actually, it was a little bit of a trick question. There's only one way we can be set apart, and that's through the fruits of the Spirit by the presence and activity of the Spirit. The applications of what he may do with us being set apart, that's too numerous to count. If he speaks to your heart and when you're passing a stranger on the street and he says, tell them this right now. Well, if not for your set apartness, they wouldn't listen to that. If you and your spouse are not getting along and all of a sudden he says, go tell your spouse this right now. If not for his set apartness and his revealed presence, they wouldn't listen to you as much. Okay? So the way that he employs his set apartness with us is also governed by the amount of fruit of the Spirit that is growing within us and its maturity. Now, there is an example of this without anybody knowing it is hiding out in the open in plain sight is the chapter on love in Corinthians. Love is a fruit of the Spirit, and fruit of the Spirit carries set apartness, truth, and is redeeming. So all the different applications of love in that chapter is still talking about all the ways to be set apart. It's talking about how penetrating the truth is and about the set apartness there along with that. But you never thought about reading it that way, huh? Every relationship, every friendship, everything is based on love and peace and kindness and gentleness and compassion, gratitude, mercy, long suffering, patience. It's all involved with set apartness and truth and being redeeming value. Every interaction, every relationship that has any of that activity is present. What do you think? Now, when Torah is judging in the house of Yaakov, it's Torahing based on you breaking Torah, sinning, and requiring atonement and forgiveness. Now, we're taught how he will judge in the writings of Kings and Judges and Chronicles. Now, in Revelations, when he judges the assemblies, he says, in these things I'm well pleased, and in these things I have against you. When he's speaking, that's not Torah speaking. That means there's areas where there's no righteousness if you're in the house of Israel, It's only if you're in a house of Yaakov in that assembly, it's a Torah matter. But it's him doing the judging, not Torah here. So that's got to be people in the assembly that are in the house of Israel. Because it's him saying, in these things I'm well pleased, and these things I have against you. It is not Torah speaking. It's the giver of Torah speaking. So as you learn more, you can see how you can identify from one passage and another what's going on there. Is it making any more sense? Okay. As your perspective continues to change, because you increase in what you learn and what he invests in your heart and writes on your heart and your foundation, your reading in scripture is going to go through some changes. You're going to understand things from a new perspective. So don't forget the perspectives you had before, because other people, as they're learning, are going to have those same perspectives. You don't get to where you're above them. You don't outgrow them. What happens is, because you're in a farther place, you got to help them along too. It's coming together a little bit. Yes, no, maybe. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, Michael.
Yes,
Maybe
sir.
you guys can tell me what you guys got from the lesson this day.
It just helps me understand, you know, I grew up in the West, obviously, and how we're taught to seek out a personal relationship with the Most High. That's something that I learned in church. But this is actually how to do it, by walking out Torah. And it's just interesting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning what the Most High is preparing for me. How he reveals himself, and how he's revealing himself. Which is very important to me.
Well, that's not difficult to tell you. That's easy. He will talk to you and reveal himself to you based on how much you're allowing the fruits of the Spirit to grow within you, to grow you. Based on how you're turning to him, based on the changes the fruits of the Spirit are making with you. That set apartness, how much set apartness you have again, is the same quantifying formula. How much set apart fruit you have, how much set apartness that fruit is giving you and growing you into set apartness, that's the degree of how much he can reveal himself. And we learn this based on what happened in Torah and what happened in the prophets. What happened in Torah was when our people were in the wilderness, and he would tell them, don't touch the base of the mountain or else you will die. Because there was so much of a set apartness there We couldn't deal with it. Wash your clothing before a certain group of you come up on the mountain to eat, so I could see you eat. They had to prepare. They could only rise to a certain point. And then he said there was something above them that they had to look through. That was the extent of the set of partners that they could deal with. They couldn't go any higher on the mountain. The Most High gave so much of his spirit to Moshe to lead the people, along with that spirit that he gave him, a portion of the spirit. What do you think? What else do you think he had? That set apartness, the truth, and being redeemed. Is it making any more sense? How much set apartness that he can give us to set us apart from what we were previously and for the world? That's how much of himself he can reveal to us. Does that help? Now there's a few twists and turns. Are we still recording?
Yes.
Okay. When Yeshayahu was told to walk around naked for 3 years because of what was coming, the Most High set apartness kept everybody from jumping on him. Why are you walking around naked? We don't want you to show your parts like Noah's grandson got cursed for seeing his nakedness. We don't want to see your nakedness. Why are you showing it all the time? But they didn't just see his nakedness. You've already had that lesson with Noah. And again, when another prophet was told, go marry a whore. So he married a whore. They had children. And she was still being a whore with other men. Yet she married a prophet, and she received some set apartness being married to that prophet who the Most High had set apart to be a prophet. Until a certain time, when it was time for that whoring to be done, and she was brought back and set apart for a month before she was set apart to him again.
Ooh.
The whole time, the Most High set apartness is doing his job. So nobody could do anything to her in the community because she was still being a whore, married to a prophet. The community didn't stone her. Yet still, what was commanded in Torah? If a woman goes and has another man besides her husband and it's seen, what does it say they're supposed to do? Pick up rocks and throw them. But because she was married to the prophet was set apart. And because she was a part of him, and that set apartness was extended to his wife, what she did, she was still set apart, because she was doing what Yahweh had ordered. And then when she was taken back from that and set apart to him, nobody had done anything to her that whole time because of the set apartness. The Most High uses a set apartness to make sure what he puts in place gets done. Is making any more sense yet? We can go to example after example, and you'll see how it's the Most High set apartness that does these things. Can anything that is dead or decaying or less than whole enter in with him? No. It says in Torah, even if somebody has hurt their testicles, they cannot enter in even before the Torah. So, what does that tell you? It was the Most High's name, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, and his set apartness that even Yeshua used in healing people and raising the dead. Because nothing less than alive and nothing less than whole can enter in with the Most High and his set apartness. When the prophet Eliyahu raised somebody from the dead, that was through the Most High's name, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, and his set apartness. They have to be made whole to enter in to the set apartness. This process makes us whole to him. And set apartness, truth, and being redeemed. Is this making any more sense?
Most definitely it is.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get back to more of this later. Baruch Hashem, that's all I have for the day. We can talk about other things.